It is an honor to be here with you again. I'm going to talk about some familiar topics, but there's some new twists and turns on them. When I first came in today, it did feel a little strange. I've been at NWOKC's table for about the last 4 or 5 Northwest Chamber events, and so finally we're changing it up a little bit. And I was honored to get a chance to sit by 2 city managers that have done some things similar to what we've done on pension reform on their local communities, and they know the hard trials that can happen throughout that. So before I go into pensions, I would like to kind of compliment Representative Eccles, and we both are working on a project that hasn't been discussed today, and it was one of the major accomplishments of this year, and that's trying to improve the unemployment system in the state of Oklahoma. For the last 8 years, I've authored one of the major bills. There's been others along the way that have made a difference, and you don't hear this story very often because Oklahoma is doing better than almost every state in the union, and so it's kind of under the radar. Just to kind of give a reminder, the Great Recession happened, Oklahoma unemployment. This is one of the great reasons why we're doing so well, is the fact that we have great companies like the ones you guys work with. We have lower unemployment, but also some of the policies have also made a difference on our financial stability. 25 states borrowed money from the federal government. Texas borrowed money initially, then they went ahead and issued bonds to pay for the unemployment obligations that they hadn't properly funded. And so we had more than half the states sitting there with debt, and many of them still have debt to this day. On the other hand, Oklahoma now has over $1 billion in our trust fund. We never borrowed a penny from the federal government, and we have one of the strongest systems if you look on a per capita basis, and it's because of a couple factors. We didn't expand benefits when it was really easy to do such. We kept our rules the same. We've made some nice reforms. This session we looked at the definitions of misconduct, trying to make sense where the employer has an equal fair shot at saying if this is a bad employee, we have to be able to get rid of them. I know each and every one of the employers in the state and everyone here wants lower taxes, and we are due, if we continue on this progression for stability, that we'll have a decrease next year automatically. And so that's something we can all be proud of. The work is never done. Representative Eccles has requested an interim study that we're going to look in detail to see if there's more that we can get done that makes sense. We got rid of the shared work program that really hadn't been utilized as a federal program that really they came into us last year, and my last talk on this topic said that we're going to try to repeal this issue. And what they wanted is to either expand it to every company, and that expansion would have greatly cost everybody and would have been unsustainable. And so we made the command decision just to repeal it and get rid of it. And so a lot to be thankful for in that regard. But you know, the topic that I'm pretty passionate about, if you've been at one of these meetings for the last 8 years, especially the last 4 years, pension reform in Oklahoma is an interesting issue. It's interesting in the fact that it impacts every single priority we do. We have a balanced budget requirement by our Constitution, but the pensions have always been able to circumvent that, because how do you accurately quantify what's due today on an obligation that could be due 30, 40, 50 years from now? And so in every state, for the most part, this has been the great exception to the rule. And so we were facing a $16 billion unfunded liability back in 2010. A lot of people had talked about the issue, but really nothing had ever gotten done. And so we started on a mission. Our mission was going to try to bring people together, try to be fair, but at the end of the day, making excuses and finding a reason to walk away from session without anything done was not going to be acceptable. And so pension reform did not start or end this year, but we did do something major. We did a dynamic, some people say historic, according to the Reason Foundation, who looks across the country. They said it was the most significant reform achieved by a state government in America. There's OCPA and Americans for Prosperity and a million other groups that have kind of come to that same conclusion, but nonetheless, there are critics. There are critics that say that it was draconian on one side or not significant on the other. And so let me say a little bit about what it has done, why we did it, and then I'll look forward to any questions that you might have when we get done. We created a new defined contribution plan. We did it where it made the most sense. State employees had been kind of asking for more mobility. They'd been asking for more freedom. and we looked at the scenario, and the funding streams were very straightforward. And so we kind of started that process in 2011, ran into some significant issues. We had other things to do by increasing the retirement age, reforming the COLAs, taking out spiking, fixing the firefighter plan. We had plenty to do then, and we still do today. But on this case, we finally got the support, and it was really a team effort. I cannot tell you enough. From the Senate, they were on board, and two of the guys up here tonight were just fantastic. They were ready to support that and do more in the future. And then all my colleagues, and one of the questions Jill asked was, could we kind of highlight some of the other accomplishments? I know they're going to individually talk about what they did, but I might just kind of touch base on this issue from different perspectives from the way I sit. From Representative Hall, looking for the future generations and knowing that we want Oklahoma to be a great state, not only today, but down the road. Representative Dank and I had some serious conversations about this, because I know how concerned he is about our seniors and making sure public service is still recognized. But at the end of the day, he was one of the champions that stood up with me, and I've recorded his debate, and it was one of the best ones I've ever heard, and I really do appreciate that. And then when I look over here, Sally, I've never even had to even ask her. I know where she stands on this issue. She's been a champion. And that really means a lot, because she taught public school. And some of the people that are most engaged in the argument are people that either have worked or are working, either as a teacher, a public employee, or firefighter. And so for her to champion and always be with me on this, it really does provide an example of people willing to do that. I don't want to miss anyone. Of course, Representative Nelson and I are good friends, and he's done a lot of great things, and he's so busy with some of the other issues, he's just usually come to me and said, I'm going to be with you, and just tell me what we need to do, and of course you love that more than anything when you're trying to get something done. And Representative Eccles will already bragged on him enough, but of course he's for this too. So we got a lot done. State employees is our second biggest plan. Some people ask why that plan, and that plan is because you need to look at the funding status. It's counterintuitive, but the more debt you have on a plan, the more risk you run on the short term on making a conversion. So clearly, as it gets better funded, mathematically, you know you can do anything on a prospective measure for new employees. And so I hear the bell. It's been a great session. Thank you for letting me join you today, and it is an honor to serve.